IT outage has wreaked havoc around the world, disrupting airports, trains, the NHS, shops, banks and broadcasters, including us here at Sky News. Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike says the issue, believed to be behind the outage, is not a security incident or cyber attack and that a fix is being deployed. The company says the problem occurred when it released a faulty update to computers running Microsoft Windows. I'm joined now by Jake Moore, who's a cybersecurity advisor at the digital security firm ESET. Jake, thanks so much for joining us. Just outline for us exactly what you think happened here.
So companies all the time deliver these updates, which are very critical. So many of us are using computers which may be affected by security issues. And so those third-party providers update all of those computers to make sure that they are secure. But usually they test them as much as they possibly can. And sometimes they throw them out onto these computers with a few issues. Now, this one here, it's obviously got a huge problem with it. Maybe it wasn't tested enough, and therefore it's knocked offline so many of these computers and put them in this thing called blue screen of death, which if you're a Windows user, you may have seen once or twice over the past, say, 20 years or so on your home computer.
So in terms of CrowdStrike coming out and saying they've identified the problem and they've issued a fix, I mean, why isn't that working immediately for everyone?
So, unfortunately, many of these fixes take a long time. And once they hit this phase called the blue screen of death, you then have to go into what's called safe mode, which means a manual attempt at sitting at the computer, making sure that you put it in this particular mode, which is safe, and then running that new fix. We usually see updates on updates, funnily enough, on our phones, for example. But we may not notice it because it's just another update that comes up. But the fact it's put it into this specific state on the computer, it means it needs someone to actually sit there and update it, which is the big problem. And so at scale, we're talking thousands of computers. And of course, there are companies with thousands of devices that they own. So going around them is going to take days before we get back to where we should be.
How damaging is this to CrowdStrike? I mean, they are a cybersecurity company. While they weren't hacked, most people pay for this sort of software to avoid tech disruptions, which clearly they've been the trigger of today.
Yeah, it's going to be a very difficult time. And of course, we don't want to cause any speculation as to why it occurred. But of course, it has happened. And we are vulnerable because we are using computers that need this speed of updates. And this is all about the balance. Now, they would have done their work on making sure that the update is secure, and they would have tested it on many machines. But of course, this is the balance about security versus the update speed. And if there was, say, a bigger problem at risk, that would be the reason why they'd push this out. But of course, we are vulnerable because we all, say, rely on so many computers in our daily lives. And therefore, it might put us back a couple of steps at the moment and lose a little bit of faith. But of course, in the future, we can learn from this and hopefully move forward and be better protected.
Well, I mean, I'm interested for you to unpack that for us a little bit, because this does feel like a more widespread and disruptive tech issue than we've seen for a long, long time. I mean, do you think people will just move on from this fairly quickly?
I don't think people will move on fairly quickly, and we will remember this, just like back in 2017, we remember the WannaCry attack, which took out the NHS and other big organizations. But we did learn from that, and that was due to a few issues. That was a cyber attack. This one isn't. But what we can do is maybe do a better testing process. And this isn't just CrowdStrike. This is everyone in the business. Third-party providers, there are many, many of them, and they're all trying to keep their customers, of course, secure. But it's that testing process that is so vital that we want to make sure that people are protected, because we don't want to see our data spilled out like we see so many times before. When these attacks occur, our data is lost and used for all kinds of other attacks. So it's vital that we do as much testing as possible, but at the same time, keep all of those computers, say, safe from the unknown attacks that are inevitable in the future.
And Jake, just for our viewers who don't know, I mean, CrowdStrike is what? In the world of cybersecurity, it's a big player, small player, giant player, and do you think they'll have lasting damage to their legacy from this?
They're a huge player in this, and there are lots of companies that are equally helping out in cybersecurity. I don't think it will damage them too much, but of course it will be remembered. But they can come back from this because they're a big company. But it also teaches them and everyone else how so important it really is to do as much testing as possible to make sure in that safe environment it works. And then when it goes out, hopefully we shouldn't ever see anything like this ever again.
Jane Moore, thanks so much for that perspective, the cybersecurity advisor at ESET. Well, our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire